Hey everybody, Mr. Richards. I'm going to be walking through Lesson 5 here on code.org. So, the thing that I want you to understand is that we're learning about variables here, and if you haven't heard about variables in math class, learning about them in computer science is actually pretty useful. And so, I want you to think of a variable as like a container or like a cup. And you name the cup, and you can put a number inside of it, okay? And so in this case, we've got this variable called x position. So picture that we've got a cup, and written on the outside of the cup is called this word x position. And then inside that cup, we have put the number 50. And the usefulness of this is that, like, let's say down here we say, okay, we're going to draw an ellipse. And instead of a number here, which we would expect it to have an x coordinate, we have this container, this cup that says x position, and inside of it we have the number 50. Okay, and you might be thinking, like, why are we going through all of this extra work to do something so simple? Like, why wouldn't we just put the number 50 in here? And the reason is because then we can change this number outside of this function, and we can move this ellipse around. Okay, so I would say the prediction here, if you're kind of following along, is that this variable that we've initialized to hold the number 50 is then called, and the number 50 is inserted here. So we should get an ellipse drawn at 50, 350. All right, and let's see, and we do. There's the center of our circle. Our x coordinate is 50. Our y coordinate is, around 350. There we go. Okay. So now we'll move on to, there's a video here that you should probably watch. In fact, we're going to watch as a class. So if you're not in the class, watch this on your own, please. We'll go on. And variables are really, really important because it allows us to actually, create things that move around the screen. It allows us to use math functions to make things move. And that's really important for in video games. We want to deal with things that are moving. Okay, so in which corner of the screen will the circle be drawn? So we've got two variables. I hope you're starting to recognize these two blocks here. Var stands for variable, and the way the variable is set up, and if you watch the movie, you would have noticed that we have variable, we have the name of the variable, in this case is x position. We're initializing it, or putting a number into that container. In this case, x position is going to store the number 300, and what's the y is going to store the position 100. Okay, now if we draw an ellipse and we say that the x position is equal to the x position variable, and the y position is whatever what's the y variable holds, we should be drawing an ellipse at 300, 100. Okay, and that should be somewhere around here on my screen, so kind of top right corner-ish. All right, so let's the top right corner, and I'm just kind of typing in notes here, but yep, there we go. Here's our ellipse drawn in the top right corner. Okay, cool. Now, as we continue to learn more about variables, we're going to be this is going to get kind of complicated kind of quick. So if you get stuck or you don't quite understand something, it's really worth your time to ask me for help or ask another student for help so that you can understand it, because otherwise this is going to get really tricky. So one of the ways that code.org kind of helps us understand and learn is that we debug, and so that we have this situation here where we've got a lot of errors in the code, and our job is to figure out where they are and fix them. So let's take a look at this. The program has multiple errors caused by bad variable labels. The errors prevent the program from being viewed in block mode, so the code is in text. Below are a few rules for naming variables. Click help and tips to read more. Okay, so variables cannot have names that have spaces. They can't start with a number, and capitalization and spelling has to be exactly the same. Okay, so let's take a look up here. We got our first one, variable size of circle. The next one, we've got x location and 2 dimension. So we already know from this, the labels can't have spaces, that this is an issue. So let's simplify this. I'm just going to call it circle size. All right, and then down here where we call it, we're just going to call it size. And you notice I've done what's called camel type in that when I mash two words together, all the words after the first word have a capital letter, and that helps us read them as if they're separate words, even though they're mashed together like that. Okay, so that's the first one, circle size, we fix that. X location. You notice that down here, when we call that variable or when we use it, the L is not capitalized, so let's capitalize that L so that these two match. And here we go. I guess we gotta do circle size again, so I gotta fix that a second time. Whoops. There we go. And now two dimension. Now, we can't have a variable that starts with a number, so we're going to do two dimension, and there we go. So now that I've fixed all of those, it should work correctly, and we have a an orange-red ellipse drawn at 200, 100, and with a size 150, 150. I'm going to say that these variables are really poorly named, and we'll probably see that in the next lesson. So let's take a look here. The program has only one variable called petal size, but it uses it 8 different times. This makes it easy to quickly make lots of changes to how your picture is drawn. Change the number assigned to petal size so that the red petals touch one another. Try to find the size that makes the most sense. Compare your answer with someone around you. So we've got a variable called petal size, and we're calling that a bunch of times. So let's run this. Okay, we've got, looks like we're drawing a green background with 5 circles. We have a center circle that's black and 4 circles around the outside that are red. And we want to change the size. So let's go ahead and change this to 75. And you notice how all the circles have gotten bigger. And the reason why that's happened is because this variable, petal size, that now contains the value 75, is used for the size of all of these 4 ellipses. Okay? And this is a great use of a variable. It allows us to quickly change the size of something when we're drawing it. If we didn't use this variable, if I wanted to change the size of those 4 circles, I would have had to come down here and change every one of these numbers, which is really annoying. So variables can be really useful for that, especially if you're drawing several shapes that are the same size. I'm going to probably leave it at 75. I think that's good. You know, they touch one another. I think that looks kind of like a flower, so we'll continue. All right, so I'm going to take a look. I'm going to go back. Well, we're going to take a look at bad naming because that's one of the ones that I want to talk about the most here. I am going to be working in text, although I know that text can get a little tricky with iPads, but I prefer to write or to code in text rather than in blocks. And when there's mistakes, we can't switch on blocks anyway. So the following variable here can't be used because of bad naming. Fix the name so you can run the program. So our variable name is shape size with a space, and we know that we can't do that. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to shape size with a capital S for the word size there. And then you notice, oh, you know what? I think there's an easier way to change this. Notice how we've called the variable size over and over. We can just fix that. There we go. Now we have a variable called size. We're calling the variable size multiple times. That looks like it's going to run just fine. Okay, now I kind of want to go back to, I think it was number 4. So here we have our variables, and the names are garbage. Okay. And so when you're making variables, you should try to come up with a pattern that you can use for all the variables you're going to do. And so, for example, circle size is a pretty good variable because it tells us exactly what that variable is going to be used for. It's going to be used for the size of a circle. So I'm actually going to leave that one the way it is. Now you just saw that we used the one that was just size, and I can see that being useful, but let's pretend we're going to draw multiple shapes and we have multiple variables for the size of different shapes. It's probably good to have circle size be the name of the variable, so I'm going to leave that one. X location and 2 dimension. So these are the X and the Y coordinates. I think I want to change these to something else, and location is kind of clunky, so I'm going to change this to X coordinate and this to Y coordinate. Okay, and the reason I'm doing that is because that's what they do. Why would I have one called X location and the next one called 2 dimension? That's stupid, right? So I can go down here, and the nice thing about code.org is that as soon as you start typing in, well, I guess not. I guess if you're good at typing, I was hoping it was going to autofill for us, but we got Y. These are X coordinate, Y coordinate. I think this is the way you should do it. You could also do X location, that's fine. X value, Y value, whatever you want to use, but just follow the same pattern so that your variables make sense. Again, when we're doing this practice, we only have 6 lines of code, but if you're going to code a video game, you're going to have like 300 lines of code, and you're going to get confused really fast if your variable names don't make sense, okay? So the practice, I'm going to skip these other ones, all right? But I do want you to do them all. And we'll take a look at this number 7. This is kind of a test. So here we go. The program currently draws a face, but the eyes are 2 different sizes. Change the program to use the variable for the size of both eyes and run the code to make sure both eyes are drawn the same size. Okay, so we've got eye size is a variable, and it's set at 27. We've got no stroke and background green, so that's going to set up a green background. We've got this really useful comment here called face, so I'm assuming we're going to make a big round circle that is going to be the kind of background of the face. We have our eyes. We're saying we're going to draw black circles or black ellipses, and the first one is eye size, and the second one is not using eye size. And then we got the mouth, which is white, and it looks like it's going to be a rectangle. So let's run that. Okay, here we go. And it looks like what we need to do here is, instead of calling the second ellipse size 10, we'll just use that eye size variable. All right, and now both eyes are the same size, and if we wanted to make them, larger, we can change the variable. If we wanted to make them smaller, we can just change what the variable is holding again. So make them 10, and then they're both small. Okay, so not super bad. It's kind of interesting. There we go. All right, let's finish that. Pretty easy, right? And there's a couple of challenges here. I'm going to leave you to do those on your own. Again, variables are a very, very useful thing for us to know how to do, and hopefully this video helps you understand how to do them a little bit better.